Hello, welcome to HITC Sport. Right, let's take a look at what player your club has overlooked this decade. You know, what player was sold on, not given a chance, basically the club's big mistake of the decade. Let's have a look. Oh, and by the way, lads, try and hit 400k subs as soon as possible. Just maybe 350,000 by Christmas. It'll make my bathing in milk on Christmas Day a little less bitter. Arsenal Serge Gnabry. Alright, hands up. Who was the hobbit dweller who allowed Serge Gnabry to slip through the cracks at Arsenal? Come on, own up. We're all friends here. I'm not sure who's to blame. Arsene Wenger, Ivan Gazidis, maybe he was the goddamn tea lady. But what I do know is reducing Gnabry, one of Germany's finest talents in years, to just 10 league games in 3 bastard seasons and a 1-game loan spell at West Brom before selling him on for 5 million quid. Something that wouldn't even have bought you one of Christian Benteke's goddamn ankles. It is absolutely horrendous mismanagement. How could a club persist with Theo Walcott for 12 years and yet only give Gnabry 10 games to prove himself? The lad is Germany's best player, worth 90 million quid, and you left him on the bench to rot beside Nicholas Bendtner and Yaya Sanogo. That's like forcing Margot Robbie to spend her Friday nights milking cows at the backhurst of County Sligo. I mean, come on, that is no way to treat talent. Aston Villa, Mark Albrighton. Don't get me wrong, I mean, Aston Villa discarding Enda Stevens like an empty crisp packet is certainly a nomination, especially when that club were forced to split up with Alan Hutton at fullback for the best part of a decade. But no, I'm gonna go with Mark Albrighton. This was laughable. The lad was released in 2014, told he was no longer good enough for Aston Villa. Within 2 years, he was playing week in, week out for the champions of England, finishing 20 places and 64 points above his former employers. And Aston Villa side were having to make do with Scott Sinclair on the goddamn wing. Again, I would imagine that's a bit like getting rejected on Tinder, and then within 2 years, you're mayor of the city, while she is now living in her mother's attic, with her only piece of male attention being from the postman. Bournemouth, Tyrone Mings. Tyrone Mings was given 17 games at Bournemouth. 17! This is allowed to cost 8 million quid, and yet Eddie Howe was so reluctant to give him a chance. Maybe it's because when he was chucked onto the pitch, he spent half the time using human skulls as trampolines, but still, he's now a £20 million England international who's played more times for Villa in 9 months than he ever did in 4 years at Bournemouth. He's also tripled his career goals tally. Brighton, Fikayo Tomori. Darren Bent would be worth a shout, but no, you cannot look past Fikayo Tomori. Yeah, I know he was only 19 at the time, but still, this was a bit of an oversight. Tomori, a current Chelsea regular and England international, was tossed out to Brighton on loan in January 2017. He played 9 games, they got promoted, and then they refused to sign him on a permanent basis or even get him back on loan. This is lad who would go on to join both Hull City and Derby County on loan. Chelsea, who back then just solved all their problems with money, were clearly neglecting this boy. Chris Hughton, I'm guessing if you chucked 5 million quid at his head, you'd have got him. But no, you let a future 40 million player slip through your cracks. Burnley, Shane Duffy. Shane Duffy was drafted into Burnley on loan in March 2011 and was given 1 game. 1 goddamn game. Look, I know Burnley pride themselves on a steely defence, Ben Gibson aside, but do you not think this is a bit of an oversight again by Eddie Howe? Yes is the answer. Yes, it definitely was. Chelsea, Kevin De Bruyne. Where do we start with Chelsea? I could go with Kylian Mbappe, who failed a trial in 2012 at just 13 years of age. Chelsea fans, meet Serge Daniel Boca. This is a man who, if you ever see him in the street, you should chuck bags of pig sick at his head. Don't actually do that, lads, come on. This is the club scout responsible for tossing away a future Ballon d'Or winner before he'd even hit puberty.
He took a trial and didn't end up convincing us because he didn't offer enough defensively.
I'm sorry, defensively? Kylian Mbappe? He's a goddamn centre forward. You don't hire him for defensive duties. That's like being given a brand new Mercedes and complaining that it doesn't fly. That's like going on a date with Kylie Jenner and rejecting her based on her inability to weld steel. But no, let's go with Kevin De Bruyne. You had him, the best player in the Premier League. He was in your grasp. Jose Mourinho, right? You are one of the greatest managers in the world. But hang your head in shame. How could you overlook this? According to De Bruyne, Jose only spoke to him twice at Stamford Bridge. He started just 2 games, spent half his time training with the under 21s, with Jose choosing to persist with Oscar. Not only did he look like he failed an audition for Oliver Twist, but he's also the same guy who happily sacrificed his career ambitions for a fatter paycheck out of the back arse of China. Selling De Bruyne, one of the finest midfield architects in world football, for 18 million quid, the same amount you spent on Andre Schürrle. It's about as disrespectful as licking the Queen's face. Crystal Palace, John Egan. Yep, step forward, Mr. John Egan. A current Ireland international and forming a solid defensive partnership with Sheffield United. He's the sort of player Crystal Palace could really have done with in their backline. They had him in their grasp, in their clutches, on loan from Sunderland in 2012. Played him just once in the FA Cup And that was it. Had they shown him a bit more attention, shown a bit of faith in getting him on a permanent deal, instead of treating him like he was infected with leprosy and replacing him with Paul McShane, then who knows, he could have been a very good Palace defender over the years. Everton, Eric Dyer. Where do we start with Everton? John Lundstram, Shane Duffy, not Shotgram Mustafi. Good lord, his brand of defending probably makes Arsenal fans envy the blind. No, I'm gonna go with Eric Dyer. Yes, many of you in the comment section below probably think that Dyer is a complete and utter hideous excuse for a footballer, somehow stealing a living in this profession, but no, come on lads. He's not spectacular, no, but he's played over 200 times for a regular top 4 contender. He's a Champions League finalist, etc. He's also taken under pressure penalties at World Cups. He's a good player. And Everton had him. He was on loan from Sporting Lisbon in 2011. And what they do, they just chuck him in the under 18s, with David Moyes never bothering to give him a chance in the first team. Leicester, Chris Wood. To be fair, Leicester did alright without Chris Wood. You know, the man probably spends every other night crying into a pillow that he just missed out on the Premier League winners medal. Chucked out of Leicester after just 7 games and 1 goal in the top flight. Sold to Leeds for 3 million quid. He was a bit hasty. I mean, clearly someone at the club didn't rate him and, you know, didn't think he was cut out for the Premier League. He scored 30 goals since moving to Burnley. I'm sure he would have been a better option off the bench than Leonardo Ulloa. I mean, come on. Liverpool, Diego Aspas. To be fair, Liverpool shouldn't have too many regrets when it comes to their recent shopping. Maybe. I'm probably reaching with this. Diego Aspas? I don't know, maybe he just wasn't cut out for England. You know, considering he had the upper body of a malnourished pillowcase. 14 games, 0 goals, and 1 laughable corner kick. But the man can score goals. He has over 100 since moving back to Spain. He's since won a Europa League. He was the highest scoring Spanish player 3 years running, featured in 2 La Liga teams of the season, netted at a World Cup, featured in 6 seasons of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. If I'm reaching, maybe Liverpool regretted selling Aspas. Well, it's a bit like saying Man United regretted selling Diego Forlan. No, they probably didn't. Man City, Kieran Trippier. I know what you were expecting, Jadon Sancho. But no, I'm not actually going to blame Man City for this one. What were they supposed to do? Chuck an unproven 17-year-old kid into the starting lineup when they're fighting for titles and Champions Leagues? Put a baby-faced Jadon Sancho on the wing, a lad probably 2 years out from his first tug in the shower, when you've got Raheem Sterling, Leroy Sané and Bernardo Silva. No, by all accounts. Look, City did what they could. They offered him a new deal. He was highly thought of. It was him. He was the one who wanted to leave. He was the one who was impatient. He quit the club. He was the one who failed to turn up for training multiple times. He was the one who forced the move. So no, I'm not blaming City at all. I will blame them for tossing Kieran Trippier in the bin though. After 30 years in the academy, he spun out to Burnley for 2 million quid, a future Champions League regular and World Cup semi-final goal scorer. You sell him for 2 million quid. Although whosever idea it was to get rid of Loris Karius as a spotty-faced team, you should probably be presented with the Medal of Honor and knighted for services to the country. Ridding the club of that clown is pretty much the same as detonating an atomic bomb. So bravo! Well done! I'm just clapping at a camera. Man United, Wilfried Zaha. I almost went with Paul Pogba, dumping him on a bench and forcing him to watch you lose at home to Blackburn with a midfield comprised of Park Ji-sung and Raphael. It was just almost as big an insult as making him watch a sex tape of his parents. No wonder it drove him out the door to Juventus. An error that would eventually cost the club 90 million quid. But no, I'm gonna go with Wilfried Zaha instead. One of the most skillful and dangerous players in the game. He was tossed out of the club after just 2 games. 2 paltry games. By contrast, Jesse Lingard has since played 185 times for the club. I rest my case. Newcastle, Florian Thauvin. Newcastle are just unlucky. It seems half the time they will be forced to watch a player's talent completely collapse. They'll completely stink up the joint for 6 months, only to go on a flourish elsewhere. Like Luke de Jong, who has since scored over 100 goals for PSV, after chucking in 12 limp, goalless games up front for Newcastle. But no, I'm gonna go with Florian Thauvin, alright? Under Steve McLaren, he played 13 games, looking frail, unfit, and too obsessed with his hair. He's since scored 63 goals for Marseille from the wing, kept Anthony Martial out of the France World Cup winning squad, and been linked with a £70 million move to Bayern Munich. I mean, come on, how unlucky is that? It's like going on a date with a girl who spent the night scraping dead skin off her feet and drinking soup through her nose. 2 years later, she's a nominee for Miss World. In what world does that ever make sense? Norwich, Harry Kane. Norwich City, you had Harry Kane on your books. Look, Harry Kane, look, I get you were in the throes of relegation battle, alright? It must have been too big a risk to chuck an unproven youngster up front, but that is what separates the great managers from the bang average. I like Chris Hughton, but lad, this one is on you. You clearly did not see this man's hidden talents. And no, I'm not talking about his ability to impersonate a broken dishwasher. On loan for the first half of the 12-13 season, he was given 3 games, a sum total of 156 minutes on the pitch. This was a future Golden Boot winner, and you forced him to sit on the bench behind Steve Morrison and a fat Grant Holt. Sheffield United, Aaron Ramsdale. Aaron Ramsdale is going to play for England one day. It's the truth. He's only 21 and he's holding down a first team spot at Bournemouth. I know Sheffield United have their own England international goalies on loan at the minute, but this one one could have been for keeps. Having come through the ranks, he was sold to Bournemouth for less than £1 million nearly 3 years ago. He's going to cost £30 million one day. And if you think Dean Henderson is going to spend the rest of his career at Bramall Lane, then clearly you just spent the week drinking bags of glue. Southampton, Martin Caceres. I honestly couldn't think of one for Southampton. This club haven't exactly overlooked too many. Maybe Martin Caceres. Maybe. Just based on the strength of his CV. Villarreal, Barcelona, Juventus 3 times. Sevilla, Lazio, Fiorentina. He was probably worth more than 1 game with Southampton, right? Tottenham, Jermaine Defoe. Again, there haven't been too many to slip through the cracks of Spurs this decade, although they almost made a horrendous mistake with Gareth Bale last decade, and Harry Kane was probably about 6 months from getting punted out of the club. I'm gonna go with Jermaine Defoe. I mean, this is a guy who Spurs sold twice. This decade he was sentenced to spending the rest of his career out in the MLS, but far too early. He was sold to Toronto in 2014. Spurs were essentially waving goodbye to a proven Premier League goal scorer when they had Roberto Soldado up front, while Defoe was just kissing goodbye his World Cup ambitions. It made sense for absolutely nobody. Watford, Brit Assombalonga. Brit Assombalonga is a proven championship goal scorer. The lad has 65 championship goals to his name. He's a decent enough forward, and yet Watford brought him through, gave him just 4 games to prove himself before selling him on to Peterborough for £1.1 million. But this was a lad who would later cost 15 million quid. I don't know. Maybe Watford are happy with flushing 15 million quid worth of talent down the toilet, but to me it doesn't make good business sense. West Ham, Victor Moses. For years, Victor Moses was just a bang average winger. Turns out everyone was just playing him in the wrong position. In 2015 he was turfed out in his 16th successive loan deal, or at least that's what it felt like, trading the Chelsea bench for West Ham's. After 1 season and 1 pitiful goal, the Hammers turned down the option to make the move permanent. Thankfully for Moses, because within a year, he was a Premier League champion playing 40 games as a right wing back. Wolves, Nathaniel Mendes-Lang. I think we can all agree that Wolves fans do not go to bed at night just wishing they'd given Nathaniel Mendes-Lang more of a chance. But lads, I couldn't find anyone else, alright? And don't you dare mention Lee Griffiths. Scoring in Scotland is about as easy as finding a trail of sweat, desperation and STDs in the Love Island shack. Mendes-Lang, I mean, I guess he's turned out half decent at Cardiff, but he was never given a chance at Wolves before being flogged in 2012. I mean, you've done alright without him, but I don't know. What do you think? Anyway, that's the end of the video. Let me know what you guys think. If you agree with these, let me know. If you don't, which you most likely don't, let me know that as well. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, I'll talk to you in a while.